We are fully into draft season now. This is Bengals on the Brain. I am Joe Goodberry, and we are going to look at some of the top tight ends in the draft class in today's episode. And the reason we're doing that is because, well, if you look at the roster, there are no tight ends on the Bengals roster right now. No one of note, at least. Hayden Hurst is a free agent. Drew Sample's a free agent. Yeah, they claimed Devin Asiasi last year, but as a whole, I think that this is a position that not only now could use an upgrade if they bring Hayden Hurst back, and we'll get to that, but I think future-wise, what does this position look like in 2-3 years? I think the Bengals wanted to draft a tight end last year. It just didn't happen. The value didn't meet where I think the Bengals were comfortable taking one. If you followed me last year and when we were going through the draft process, I think in rounds like 3, 4, and 5, there was a few guys that lined up. But when you pick 31st, they end up going in front of you, and that happened a few times. So the Bengals never got a tight end in last year's class. They signed Hayden Hurst to a one-year deal. I think Hayden Hurst was fine for what they wanted in that position. He gave you pretty much what you got from C.J. Uzomah, and you got a good locker room guy that was easy to root for. So I think they would love to bring Hayden Hurst back if the price is right. Currently, PFF Brad Spielberger, who's the best at projecting contracts going into the offseason, has Hayden Hurst getting a 3-year deal at about $9 million per year. And I got to say, you got to let him walk for that price because it's just, you want to give $9 million to Hayden Hurst, $9 million to Tyler Boyd this year. Man, that's a starting left tackle. I mean, a good starting left tackle at $18 million if you wanted to go that route. So cap management-wise, I know cash cap, that would be completely different things out of the spending of what the Bengals would normally do for a left tackle, but that's still $18 million of cap space that you would spend on two guys that are options number 3 and 4, and sometimes even 4 and 5 in the offense when the running back's having the day that they can have in this offense. So, what do you want to do at that position? Even if you bring back Hurst, is it a 1-2-year deal? Remember, he's 29 years old, or will be this year. Do you take him and say, all right, we want to insert a rookie to develop behind him in the mid-rounds or so? Or if you lose him, do you bring in a value free agent that's a veteran and then draft a guy with a premium pick? And that's why I think the conversation is here and where we're going to start. Is there someone available? Is there someone that could be the pick at 28? Remember, the Bengals picked 29th, but the Dolphins don't have a pick because they can't follow the rules. So with the 28th pick in the first round, is there someone you could take with that? And if not, because tight end is kind of like linebacker, kind of like running back. Do you spend a first-round pick on them? That's a whole other conversation. We'll probably touch on it later. I want to lead off with the two types of tight ends that you can have in a modern offense. And the one is the Y tight end, is what I always called it. And the Y tight end to me is like a Rob Gronkowski, a Jason Witten. He can line up on your line of scrimmage. He can block a defensive end if he has to. He can set the edge. You can run behind him. He can run routes. He's going to get jammed. He's going to get rerouted off the line of scrimmage. You can run option routes with him. A lot of stuff you would do with like a Tyler Boyd, but from the tight end position. And that's different from a lot of the modern day guys because you've got to be able to block a little bit. You've got to have the size. You've got to have the power and the strength. The modern day guys, maybe like the Travis Kelce, and it's not taking anything away from them. It's just the way the game has evolved. If Rob Gronkowski was the Y tight end of the last generation, you may remember Aaron Hernandez was the H or the H-back or the move tight end in offenses. And I think that's more of what a Kelce is. That's more of what a Hayden Hurst is. Drew Sample was the Y tight end for the Bengals. They lost him. I think that's why they were interested in O.J. Howard and why they put in the claim for Devin Asiasi, because those guys can block. They've got the power and the size to play on the line of scrimmage. It helps your offensive line as a whole. We talked about this. I don't know if it was this show or not. Might have been a podcast I was on. They only let Hayden Hurst block 15 times in pass protection all year long. You want to help these tackles out. The Bengals had the third least amount of help for their offensive tackles in the entire NFL, or at least they called the least amount. That's something that could really help them. But you got to have guys that can block. But if you can't find those guys because they're getting rarer and rarer coming out of college, you see the move tight ends more often. The guys that can play in the slot, that can play out wide. You're going to get a little more creative with blocking, bringing them all the way across the line and taking the defensive end or getting them up to the second level as fast as possible, just chipping the D end and going with it. That's okay too. And I would like one of those guys. Those guys are more athletic, usually have better ball skills, better receivers. They probably even played receiver at some point in high school or college. And there's a lot of guys in this class that are like that. But there are, and I think the consensus top two in this class are both Y tight ends, because those are the rare guys. Those are the guys that can change your offense, because the safety's going to have to cover them. The linebackers can't cover those guys. But if you can get one of these two, and that's where we're going to start, so I'm leading into it, trying to, clumsily. The first guy we're going to start with is Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame. And I think everyone knows him. He's a Northern Kentucky guy. So he said his favorite team is the Bengals. It'd probably be interesting if he was the pick at 28. But we're going to start with his blocking, and then we'll go to his receiving, and we'll talk about him after this. I wanted to start off with the blocking video from Michael Mayer, because I think everyone knows he's a good receiver. But I was shocked. You know me, I don't watch a lot of college football, so I knew his name. I knew he was a good receiver. But did I know he was a blocker? I did not. I thought he would probably be a guy that got in the way and be a fine blocker. And I think everyone would agree with that, even the people that don't think he's a great blocker. I think he's a good blocker. They use him more as a move tight end, but he does a lot of wide tight end stuff, like here setting the edge and climbing up he'll chip and bump that defensive end inside, and then he'll come up and climb up and get that linebacker, or they'll pull him out in space and get him to block on the edge and get against the corner or a safety or an outside linebacker. But everyone should be able to do that part, the move part, unless you're an unathletic tight end. But when you can block from the Y and block on the edge, on the line of scrimmage, and block a defensive end inside. Here's the defensive end, number 7, he's going to go against here. His knees buckle on contact. So Mayer's got the strength and the power in him. He's going to lock this number 14 out edge guy again, allow the run to get to the outside. That's what you want. So I like the awareness on this one, too, as he gets jammed. He's trying to leak out for it, but he ends up getting pieces of two guys to let the quarterback get outside for the first down and pick up a little bit extra. But then, again, washing down the edge so that the running back can just cut it up and at the goal line and get in for the touchdown. I like the movement with the combo blocks with the other guy here. I don't know if that's the right tackle or another tight end. It's another tight end, 88. But they wash that guy out completely. They get him off the line and then drive him into the ground. And that's what you want to see. And Mayer does it. And this is all from one game. I wanted to show that, because if you can have 15 to 20 key blocks in a game, what are we talking about? That's A-plus stuff. Now, the other games aren't as clean and aren't as great. They just had Clemson's number in this game, but he's blocking 98 here, just washing them completely 15 yards downfield. And that's a high recruit. Michael Mayer, number 87 from Notre Dame. Looking like Gronk with that 87, but starting off here with a few man coverage routes that if you can isolate your guy here and he can run one-on-one and just undress people on longer routes and clutch situations. I believe this is 4th down versus Cincinnati. That's what you want out of your tight end, or a tight end that you're going to draft potentially in the first round, right? It's a whole question on what you want in a tight end, but you do want him to be able to do this. You do want him to be able to win one-on-one against man coverage with his hands, with his athleticism. This ball even gets tipped right at the end. So good hands, good concentration. And he does this 3 times. This is 3rd down now. So the last play was 4th down versus Cincinnati. Then 3rd down, he pulls his groin. Now this is 4th down again, and he undresses, I think that's Brian Cook. So, if you can do these things, that's what you want to see. Here he is in the bowl game last year. Against zone, sits in the zone, gets a pass that's thrown a little bit behind him in the window, which is, again, tight ends are going to have to do that. Tight end slot receivers is something you guys got to be able to do all the time. Catch the ball, embrace for contact, and be okay. We get kind of a wheel route here and a back shoulder ball. We know Joe Burrow loves to throw those. Mayer can do it. I don't think he's Tyler Eifert playing above the rim or anything, but he definitely has good enough hands and ball skills to do it. He actually ends up dropping this ball, or at least in the NFL it would be, after he hits the ground and it pops out. So it's just something to be aware of and something to know. He runs a slant here, again, between some bracket coverage, getting a stacked release.
Nice ball, nice catch while you're diving, getting across the goal line. That's what you want to see. And then the last play here, for this game at least, is a touchdown. Coming across the middle against man coverage, running to that pylon, diving for the touchdown through contact. He's not great after the catch, but that's why I want to show these. Like, how is he in contact, in contested situations? How are his hands in these situations? And I've got no qualms about it. And the last play here from the Clemson game, I showed a lot of blocking from the Clemson game. He's lined up in the backfield. Clemson is like, okay, you've been running it down our throats. Here's a little play action. They're late to get to him, and he just catches an easy ball.
So for me, Michael Mayer checks every box I could look for. I don't think he's going to be the fastest or most agile guy. I think for his size, he'll be fine. He'll pass, like the good athlete thresholds that you would like for that position, especially if you're going to spend a first-round pick. The guy better be a good athlete. I think he is that. I don't know if he's an elite athlete. I don't know if he's a special athlete. I'm projecting 4.75 in the 40 for comparison. Travis Kelce is a 4.68. Gronk's a 4.68. I want to say Eifert was a 4.67. So a little bit slower than those guys, but can still get down the field. 4.75 is the minimum you can have for a tight end if you want him to be like an all-pro, number one type tight end. So that's something to look for at the combine. Does he pass that threshold? If not, he could actually drop a little bit. If he tests too well, I don't think he's going to be there at 28, and he goes in the top 25. Easy, probably 15 to 25. He's a good enough blocker. I don't think he's a tremendous blocker. I don't want to give that impression away. I think he is a good blocker who's young and can develop even more. He's willing. He's got the power and the strength, and I think he's got the intelligence to do it. So I'm putting him in the bucket as of now for would I take him? Because remember, that's the process. I said, would I take Darnell right? I think I would. I'm waiting to see his testing. And last week we said we take Elijah Cansey. I expect him to test well, and I would take him at 28 based on his tape. This week now, would we take Michael Mayer? I would, as long as he doesn't come out and run a 4.85 or 4.82, something in that range. Even like a 4.78, I would be, because I think the tight end class is good, and we're going to get to that. So I want him to be a good enough athlete for me to turn the key on that. But as of right now, put him in the bucket for that pick in the first round. And the next guy to talk about is out of Georgia, Darnell Washington. You're going to see him big number 0 as soon as we start the film. And this guy, they got two tight ends there, Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington, and Georgia's just doing whatever they want with these guys. Washington is an absolute freak of an athlete and a prospect. We're going to start with the tape of him blocking. I only got a handful of him receiving at the end. He wasn't used that. He was definitely used more as a blocker than a receiver. And you can see the flashes of him as a receiver. But he's a bit robotic with his hands. Reminds me of Jermaine Gresham a bit with his hands. Now he's young though. And can you get him to be a good enough receiver that his blocking, man, you want to help the O-line. If there's not an O-lineman available that you think is an immediate upgrade, you take... he's going to be a top 5 blocking tight end, I think, in the league the day he walks in. The type of advantage and the type of benefits you get from that, if you draft a Darnell Washington, it could transform your offense. He's one of the rare guys that could be there. I think Mayer could too, but like Bijan Robinson could, Darnell Washington could. And of course the tackles, and if you hit those picks, they could. But I think he's pretty safe. Darnell Washington's pretty safe. You just want to be sure he can be a good enough receiver to get you 600 yards or so. If you're keeping both of these receivers on the outside, you may not need a guy to be an all-pro type receiver. Let's check out Darnell Washington, an absolute freak.
You see that big number 0 on the left? This guy is 6'7", 270 pounds, and a monster. A monster from Space Jam. The dude is a freak. This is LeBron James playing tight end. Maybe, that makes him sound like a good receiver. I'm showing all the blocking first. I think he has the potential to be a good receiver, but the blocking here is just... The 6th offensive lineman is his nickname, and it's true. And it's why he's even considered, I think, in the first round, or at least in the fringe area, the top 45-ish, is because he is such a good blocker. It's insane. I don't think I've seen a guy in all my years of draft analysis be this devastating, this impactful from the tight end position. You could pass protect with him, as you see right here. They bring him across, and then he's blocking the edge for the quarterback on a pass play twice in a row. You can't do that. We normally say don't let your tight ends block at all, block defensive ends and pass protection. He's sufficient at it. I mean, honestly, if he probably should have gained 30 pounds and just been an offensive tackle, probably be an all-pro offensive tackle first rounder. Might even get drafted higher. But we're talking about a guy who can move, who has some range in his ball skills, and when he catches the ball, I think he's a bit robotic sometimes catching. He's not the most agile guy. I think he has good straight line speed. I think he is a monster after the catch in terms of running guys over, jumping over guys, spinning, diving, whatever it takes to continue to rumble down the field. So he can be a weapon, but like number one is his blocking. Number two is his, whoa, this guy can do something after the catch.
Yeah, and I say put any game on, type in Darnell Washington, you'll get more clips of him as a receiver. I couldn't use, so as you watch these, there's a lot of things I can't use on these YouTube shows because they get flagged. And if I use any type of footage from the TV copy, it's a no-no, and they try and shut us down. But they're all over on YouTube. If you type in Michael Mayer versus, you're going to get a bunch of games that come up. And you're going to see all the plays that he is involved in. You can get like an 8-minute video where you see all of his plays. I suggest everyone does this. Watch Mayer. Watch Darnell Washington. You're going to get more games where he is more of a receiver and does more. I didn't have the all-22. I'm trying to keep it just to all-22 on this channel, on this show, so that it doesn't get flagged. That stuff is okay to use. And so I go watch both of them. Go type them both in when you're done with this. Type in their name, type in versus VS, and see what comes up. That brings me to my next guy. I highly suggest you type in Dalton Kincaid versus USC. I think he has 16 catches in that game, or is it 16 targets? Either way, I think it's 16 catches. Couple deep ones, couple sideline ones. Really good athlete, really natural mover. Transitions very well from a receiver to a runner. And I think tight end is one of the underrated yak positions in today's NFL. We always talk about like the slot guys got to get some yak. The running backs got to get. The tight end creates a lot of yak opportunities. And I think Dalton Kincaid can really do that. I don't think Mayer does it as well. I think Darnell Washington can do it because he's such a powerful, hard-to-tackle dude. I mean, you see guys just peeling themselves off the ground trying to tackle Darnell Washington. But Dalton Kincaid looks the most like Travis Kelce. I mean, he's 23 and a half years old, coming from a small school. Kelce was the same exact way. Moves really well, natural receiver, good hands, high points, smooth, transitions to a runner very well. All the receiving things, I'm checking them all off on Dalton Kincaid. I don't like that he's older, but it actually hasn't impacted tight ends too much in terms of progression. It has definitely impacted other positions more. We'll get to that when we get to those positions. But I do like that Darnell Washington and Mayer are 21.9, 22 years old as rookies. Kincaid, though, can he block? So we saw 2 wide tight ends. What type of tight end is Dalton Kincaid? I'll tell you right now, he is a move tight end. He can't block. I would not let him block at all. Maybe he turns into Hayden Hurst type of a blocker, which is okay. You can get by with that, but you're not going to ask him to do too much. They're not going to change your offense from what the Bengals were last year going forward. He may be a better receiver eventually, and that's how it changes. But in terms of blocking up front, protection, springing some extra long runs or explosive runs, you're not going to get it with Kincaid. We're going to start there because I started with the Florida tape when I watched him, and it was an absolute disaster, almost to the point of hilarity. So try to enjoy it. I got one receiving play at the end, or I got one to start with and then one at the end of Kincaid here. Try to enjoy it and just say, okay, he's not a blocker. Let's watch him get bullied in the trenches by Florida. And then I'm telling you, go watch some receiving games, the USC game after this video, not after the entirety of this episode. But let's watch them right now.
So a lot of people told me to watch Dalton Kincaid, number 86 here for Utah. I put on the Florida game first. I figured that would be, this is how they start the season, and I figured that would be the best competition. And I was just shocked at how poor of a blocker he was. I was really shocked by Utah completely. I was told after the first 2 games I watched, I was like, I can't do this. I can't watch this guy try and block. He gave effort, right? Like this play right here. He just consistently wasn't just not strong enough, not powerful enough, just didn't have good enough technique, good enough awareness. But I was told Utah got their season turned around and actually won the pack, which okay, I could not believe it after watching the first 2 games of the year. Figured the Florida game would be a good one to watch. And if you see here, we've already watched the Mayor, like 1 game versus Clemson. He had maybe 2 losses that entire game. Kincaid probably has 8 losses in that Florida game. Here's a nice corner post route, and you see his athleticism, his ball skills. He can high point the ball really well. He moves really well. He's a good receiver.
Now I see some have Kincaid in the end of the first round to the mid-second. I don't like that. I think that's early. I give him a 75 on my grading scale. So we've got a sheet. You'll eventually see all this. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see it even more there. Guys that grade with me is Mike Santagata. Other guys building. A lot of help from everyone. Building the data profiles for all these people, all these prospects. I give him a 75. I gave Michael Mayer an 81, I want to say. Darnell Washington a 77. So it lets you know where they're at in there. I do like Dalton Kincaid as a receiver. Would I take that guy at 28? I would not. If the Bengals trade back, if it's in the 40s, I would consider it. I got to see how he tests. I expect he tests very well. Would I take him at 60? I would. And so that you have to get that value. You got to understand where that is. Darnell Washington, I never got to that, right? Do we turn the key on Washington at 28? If he tests like a freak, like an absolute freak, I think he does go in there. And the reason why that matters is because you won't get him at 60. If he tests extremely well, he won't be there at 60. So you got to decide, is he enough of an impact, and this is Darnell Washington, is he enough of an impact player to take him at 28? I think he might be, because he's so rare in what he does, you're not going to find it, really. But Dalton Kincaid, I would take at 60. And I would like for him to test really well and really hammer that home. There's a couple other guys that I'm getting to right now. Luke Musgrave, Oregon State, and Sam LaPorta. LaPorta, for me, he moves really well. He catches very well. He's very good after the catch. Very, very good after the catch. Probably the best tight end after the catch of the top group that I've watched so far. And again, like I said, I think that's a sneaky position to be a yak guy. He's a willing blocker, I should say. Iowa, they're going to run it. They're going to put him at the Y. They're going to ask him to do these things. He wasn't very good at it. I think he's gotten better because I actually went back and watched the game from last year too. He's gotten slowly better. He's got to get much better than that. I think he's 22 and a half years old now. Maybe when he gets a little bit stronger, he's not the tallest guy. His hands and ball skills and his upfield vertical burst, I think he's going to be good. And I hope he tests really well too, because then he'll be in the conversation for 60. If not, if he's a 3rd or a 4th round pick, remember this is Sam LaPorta out of Iowa. If he's a 3rd or 4th rounder, which is where I see him going in mocks, that's when it becomes a value pick and a guy I would really target in those mid rounds. Luke Musgrave, I am uncertain about still. He looks fast. He looks athletic. I thought he ran really good routes at the Senior Bowl. That was the first time I seen him. Really natural hands. Again, I don't think he's a good blocker, too. Of the bad blocking guys, I'd probably have it LaPorta of those 3, Musgrave, and then Dalton Kincaid of the bad blockers, of the H tight ends, of the move tight ends. So if Musgrave tests like an absolute freak, I think he's 40 on consensus board that we've got on our spreadsheet. If he's 40th, you can't take him at 28, right? He had the highest drop rate of all these guys, career drop rate. He had one of the lower contested catch rates for being a receiving tight end, and I think he was better this year. His numbers say he was better this year. I think like an 8% drop rate instead of a 16 for his career, which is really high. Is that worth a 28th pick? I'm not sure it is. And I don't know if he's going to be there at 60. Like, if the consensus has him going in the 40s, I just don't see how that value ever lines up. I've done a few mock draft simulators for Luke Musgrave to see if I can get in that range. Doesn't end up happening. I don't have clips of him today. He's going to be someone that maybe we can get a better idea of the value. Like if he tests crazy, there's a chance he runs like a 4.45. If he does, then he's going to be in the conversation at 28, and we'll go back and watch him and do a full episode on him. But I wanted to shout out Musgrave and LaPorta because I think they're in the next tier. The next few guys here, are they second rounders? Especially LaPorta, Dalton Kincaid. Are they second rounders? Can you get LaPorta in the 3rd? And that's where we're at with tight ends. So I'm putting Mayer in the bucket. I've got Darnell Washington right on the edge of the bucket. Like, I'd like to have him. But how do I get the right value for him? I've had a mock draft where he was there in the second round. I ran to the podium for that one. He's right there. I want to see the way he tests because then there's no chance to get him later. And then, do I like Kincaid? I like him at 60. Do I like Musgrave? I like him at 60. Do I like LaPorta? I do. I couldn't get more clips of him because most of them are all TV footage. So type in Sam LaPorta versus on YouTube. And thank you for watching this episode of Bengals on the Brain. I am Joe Goodberry, and we're going to keep it moving. I want to really get to running backs and corners soon. So that'll probably be the next 2 episodes before free agency starts, and we can really dive into that. Hit the like and subscribe if you will, and stick with us through the offseason.